So here we are at the bottom of page 14, I believe it is. Let me make sure here. Bottom of page 14 in your unit book, how to graph a table of values. So let's say you're comfortable making tables of values just like we saw before by substituting a bunch of x values into your equation, calculating the y's to go with them. And now you've got a nice table of values like we see here, and you're trying to turn it into a graph. So really this is pretty easy. Here's what we have to do. We have to say to ourselves, let me turn each of these lines of the table of values that I've got for myself into a point on the graph. And the way that I do that is I treat each of these independent variables as an x and each of these dependent variable values as a y. And together, like this, when x is 0, y is minus 20, that just shows up on the graph as the point x is 0, y is minus 20. Like right here, you can see it here. When x is 0, y is minus 20. So that's a point on my graph right here. I just took that here. Now I put this point on. When x is 2, y is minus 10. When x is 2, y is minus 10. You might have noticed that the scale in this graph is different for the x-axis than it is for the y-axis. We've already seen in class that that's okay as long as you're consistent with the scale all across the x-axis, and separate from that, you're consistent with the scale all along the y-axis. Okay, so we can see here each box along the x-axis is worth 1. So I'm jumping by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whereas along the y-axis, each box is going to have to be worth 5, right? 5, 10, 15, 20. All right, so that's how I have my first point here, my second point here. I look at the line, I've got 4 and 0 is a line here, so I got to do 4 and then up 0. That's my next point on my graph. And finally, 10 and 30. So I go over here, 10 for x, 30 for y. That puts me right up there. And you might be able to spot here these 4 points in this table of values are showing up as a straight line. Now, if you keep in mind this example here, we're talking about number of cars washed. We understood from the problem before, when we saw it before, that I'm charging $5 for each car that I wash, right? That's why 2 cars is making it so that I've got $10 more in profit than if I had 0 cars. Now, what that means here is that even if I can't exactly see what the next points would be until I draw a line, every time x is going up by 1, y is going up by 5. X is going up by 1, y is going up by 5. That's how I end up with that point there. X going up by 1, y goes up by 5, up by 1, y goes up by 5. And if I draw a line here, we'll see that that's exactly what I'll see throughout this line. Right? I want the line to keep going beyond the points that I've graphed. This one here should keep going all the way that way. Now in this case here, it doesn't really make sense. This isn't a very straight line, sorry about that. It doesn't really make sense to talk about washing -1 cars here, but we still graph the line completely going further in both directions. And the rate of change in this line, again, if I'd drawn it a little better, would be +5. Right? I could calculate that by taking 2 points, doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'd get the slope like that.